By now, most of us have already heard about the tragic death of Steve Harwell, the lead singer of Smash Mouth. It's really sad. He was only 56, and his son had died at only 6 months, and he had alcohol problems since then. There was a pretty good list put out by Watch Mojo of their top 10 songs, but I thought it was missing a lot of fan favorites and some really good songs that have really fallen under the radar. I know a lot of people like to make jokes about Smash Mouth being the Shrek band, but they were a lot more talented than people realize. And I just wanted to make a list of top 10 songs that you might not have heard that deserve a second listen. Number 10, we have Sugar. This is from Old Habits, an unreleased album of Smash Mouth, trying to put something out that sounded more like Fish You Mang than anything they had done in the 10 years since. Uh, it never ended up getting released, which is a shame. I only heard the song because it got leaked by somebody affiliated with the Lost Media Wiki, but it's really worth a listen. If you could find it on YouTube, it's on my channel. It's on somebody else's channel who has a lot of their other songs from Old Habits. It's really catchy. It's probably the catchiest thing they ever released after their third album. I think it's the best thing they released after that third album, to be honest. Yeah, check it out. It's called Sugar. All right, and number 9, we have Padrino from Fish You Mang. This is a mafia-themed song that has impressions of Marlon Brando and a reference to Al Pacino, who provides the title quote of the album from Scarface. It's a really funny song with a lot of Italian references and kind of like a lot of other songs from the album, pretty humorous and sarcastic, um, a lot more so than their later albums that didn't have that novelty factor as much. Uh, it's not number 8. We have Sister Psychic from the self-titled album. This is a much more poppy song. It sounds almost like something NSYNC or Backstreet Boys would put out around that time. It's about a psychic who's really a joke and a fraud, but there are some really smart-assy lyrics about her, and it's pretty entertaining. It isn't one of the most thought-provoking songs, but like Padrino, it's pretty funny. And at number 7, we have Beer Goggles. This is probably the only song on this list that got released on the Greatest Hits album. It kind of starts off with a Beach Boys homage, and then it's really just about being a desperate loser who will go out with any woman because you're so desperate. And there's a reference to the Armour hot dogs, even kids with chicken pox. So like changes it to even chicks with chicken pox. It's another funny song on the album. The album has a lot of funny songs that don't really get the interest they deserve. And at number 6, we have Disenchanted from Self Titled. This is almost like a Bond theme. Uh, it has some pretty cryptic and ominous lyrics about Land of the Thousand Chances. It's one of the longer songs. It's more kind of reminiscent of other songs like Fallen Horses and from the same album Force Field that are a little bit ominous in this way, but it's pretty catchy and entertaining. It ends pretty oddly with this. With you can hear a crash of a speaker or a receiver. There's a reference to the Neumann falling. I guess it was an expensive piece of equipment, but it's a catchy song. All right, now we have Stoned, number 5 from Astro Lounge. This is one of the only Smash Mouth songs with an obvious drug reference, along with a song called Virgin Girl that was released on the Half Baked soundtrack. Uh, this is was kind of surprising because by this point, Smash Mouth you kind of associated it with children's films, and they after the first album they stopped using the F word and stopped using swears, but the song is really catchy. It's kind of reggae-ish, and it has a reference to Bill Clinton when he claimed he didn't inhale because he says, "I'm getting stoned, and what's wrong with that? The president seems to be just fine." And now number four, we have "Nervous in the Alley" from Fushi Mang. This is a song about a rich girl who leaves home because she thinks her parents are lame, and she ends up on the streets and selling drugs, and she eventually dies. It kind of reminds me of that song by Nick Cave, "Dig Lazarus Dig." Even though it's thematically a lot darker, it's still very upbeat and catchy, like a lot of the other songs on Fish You Mang. But it really shows that Smash Mouth, even this early, weren't afraid to go in a darker direction, even though some of their other songs on this album seem like stand up comedy almost. All right, at number three, we have Keep It Down from Self Titled. This is a much more experimental and electronica sounding song. One critic from AllMusic compared it to Blur, although they compared it in a negative light. I was kind of surprised when Watch Mojo included this as an honorable mention because I've always liked this song. It has a sample from Ain't No Sunshine by Bill Withers, and it has a lot of other strange sounds, and it's very endearing and catchy. And I'm surprised some people think it's one of their worst because I've always thought it was a highlight of the album and proof that they could do things beyond what people know them for. Coming up number two, we have The Fawns from Fish You Mang. This got a promotional single. If you look at the image, it's a song that's pretty self deprecating and being a loser and comparing yourself negatively to somebody who's cool, in this case, Fonzie from Happy Days. There's a reference to Fonzie supposedly pulling his own trigger, which of course never happened on the show. And I don't think he ever played the tuba either, but it became a concert staple later on. I was kind of surprised it wasn't one of the songs from this album to be on the greatest hits album. They put "Flow" instead, which is, I mean, it's a first track, but I never thought "Flow" was one of the best. I mean, it is all right, but yeah, the Fawns, when they put it on the acoustic, they re-recorded it for the acoustic album. There was a weird gimmick where they had Alexa saying, "I don't recognize Fonzie from Happy Days." I don't know. The Fish You Mang acoustic album was an interesting idea, but the originals are so much better. And coming up at number one, we have "Push" from Fish You Mang. Speaking of the acoustic Fish You Mang, they didn't include this song on it at all, and I couldn't believe it because I think this is a great song. It's probably the most punk rock song on the album, so I guess that's probably why they didn't include it, but it was still odd. It's extremely fast paced and catchy. It's a lot like some of the demos on their the East Bay sessions that is kind of hard to find, but it's worth looking for because it has demos of some of the other songs from Fish You Mang, like "Nervous in the Alley." But yeah, Push really deserves a second listen.